So hello, everybody. Today, I've got the pleasure of and the honor to interview a distinguished gentleman called Gert Olefs. Gert is a man on a massive mission, and I just had to interview him in readiness for Christmas because his message is about peace. He is the leader of a world peace movement. He is the author of an incredible book, World Peace 2035. World Peace 2035, in which he describes how he came about this quest and in this massive mission. And then he also explains what are some of the challenges. But I thought, let's talk to him and see what he has to say. And also, he has interviewed world leaders in his quest for world peace. Gert, you were born and raised in Brussels, but you've worked in corporate world in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. So you're well-traveled. So you have seen the world.
Well, I have seen parts of the world, yes.
Parts of the world.
And besides having lived in 3 different continents that you mentioned, I've also been to the North America quite a lot, especially the United States during my business career. So, and I'm married to a Brazilian lady, so I know that small country rather well as well. So yes, I feel, and that's a very good point, Peter, I feel like a world citizen, a global citizen. And to me, even though I'm from Belgium, a small country, and today is a very, very special day. As you may know, it's Remembrance Day, Armistice Day, 11th of the 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 101 years ago, the World War I ended. And this is also a bit of an introduction to where does this quest come from, because my grandfather survived 101 years ago. And that's why I'm sitting here. If he would not have survived, I wouldn't be here. And, you know, Belgium is a small country, but we have experienced 2 world wars in the last century, in the 1914-18, which your country knows very well because you have lost a lot of men on our Flanders fields here. And I still visit the graves every year in the west of the country where the fighting took place. And so there is a deep connection, even though there is a long distance between us today, there is a very profound connection to different parts of the world, young men who came to fight here in the middle of World War I. And so that's, thank you for inviting me and for being able to speak on this very special day, because it's very dear to my heart. Because of, you know, my grandfather was a special man. He died when I was less than 6 years, so when I was 5.5 approximately. But he left a very, very deep impression, and I have his World War medals. And I grew up in Brussels, very near to the institutions of the European Union. So when you see the news, I don't know if you get that in Australia, but when there is another important meeting in Brussels of the European Commission, etc., you always see these images of the center. And I grew up a few hundred meters from there. And so without you knowing it and realizing it, you kind of become inoculated with, I would say, an idea and a concept and a project that to me is one of the most beautiful that has ever been achieved in the history of humankind, and that's the European Union. And why is it so special? Because after 2,000 years of war, since Julius Caesar visited us with the Romans about 2,000 years ago, and ever after, there has been almost constant fighting in this part of the world. And for some reason, after 2 horrible world wars with tremendous devastation and loss, we came to our senses in some way, and we have, I mean the European people have found another way. And so now for 75 years already, there has been, or almost 75 years, there has been peace on the continent. And not just peace between 2 countries, but peace between 28 countries. Who have been in many cases very long-term enemies. Think of England and France and the Spain and Holland, and then what was called the Holy German Empire, Holy Roman Empire, sorry, which is coinciding a lot with with the territory that is today larger Germany and Austria, and so it's a tremendous achievement. And I'm the first generation who has never known war. So my father witnessed the Second World War. My grandfather was a soldier in the First World War. And here I am as the first representative of a peaceful generation. And we have had a tremendous life. Peace offers the possibility for tremendous life. This has been
we take it for
coupled.
granted, don't we? We take it for granted.
Well, yes, and that's one of the challenges that we are facing, I believe, is that in the West or in the rich part of the world, and if you take a map, you take all of the European Union, but you also take Australia, New Zealand, you take Japan, Korea, Taiwan, you take China, you take, Singapore, all Southeast Asia, basically. You take large parts of the world and there is peace. To varying degrees of success, I would say, because peace in and by itself, to me, is the basis, the foundation upon which you can build very prosperous societies. And I think that countries like Australia, New Zealand, the European Union, Canada, a very important country, United States, and so many others have also developed not just peace, but also have offered through their political system and their justice system, etc., a quality of living and a standard of living that has never been surpassed before in mankind. We are richer than the richest people in the past, even the emperors and the kings, because if they got a bad infection, they died at the time. We don't. We have antibiotics, we have medical care. So we are the first generation in the world that is living an incredible life of opportunity. And we met each other, Peter, in London. You were at the time also staying in Spain. You have just painted my travels around the world. So this is because we have peace and because we have prosperity. And the problem for us is that we don't realize it. We don't realize we have this peace, and we don't realize that the platform and the podium on which we live is actually the podium of peace. And yes, that is one of the big problems that I also see, is that we are not aware of it, and therefore we take it for granted. And it is very difficult to get the message of building peace globally, and therefore, bring this fantastic achievement to all parts of the world as a very important mission. And I have been starting this non-profit organization 2 years ago, and we have focused so far on bringing out the message into the world. And we have built up more than 1 million followers on Facebook, for instance. That's a first achievement, which is very big for a small startup non-profit. And we are in the top 10 of NGOs, I believe, in the world. And most of the others are very, very well-known names that have been active for decades. So that is, we have focused on that. I just got a message yesterday that our posts last week reached 2.2 million people just in 1 week. So we are becoming a bit more professional in how we are doing things, and we're getting more successful in spreading the message. But of course, that is just the beginning of the quest and the journey to this very big mission. But to me, it doesn't feel like it's such an incredible sized mission. To me, it feels like I've grown up in it all the time. You have grown up in it all the time. Well, I love it. It's I tell you why I think it's we will have a choice. Either we become peaceful so that we can jointly become sustainable. Because in my book also, I wrote a chapter on peace, world peace and sustainability. To me are like Siamese twins. They are just connected to each other. And whereas
explain
you have,
how is that?
Well, the opposite of sustainability is war. If you see images of today of Syria or Yemen, or where there has been fighting and bombardments, or you take images from the First World War, a city here in Belgium, Wipers in English, you will see the same images come back. This is utter devastation. This is the total opposite of living in a way that is sustainable for everyone. It is the destruction of everything and everyone. And therefore, war is the opposite pole of sustainability. It also, in the way it operates, even if it is not at war, the military-industrial complex and the armies of the world are amongst the most polluting institutions in the world. And for instance, you know that the US Army is exempted from all climate agreements and climate commitments that the United States States makes. And this is not just the US Army, it's every army. Just an example, one fighter jet burns more fuel in 1 hour than you do with your car in 1 year.
Wow.
So you can imagine all the fighter jets in the world flying around, doing all these missions. This is just one example. Huh? You have another one, for instance, the destruction of the oil wells. Maybe you remember in the Gulf War.
Yes.
You know, and all these dark fumes you know, going into the sky. This is tremendously negative for the environment. And I believe that whereas on the one hand you have peace generating very, very little passion and enthusiasm and action around the world, you have sustainability and climate change as I would say as a very, very important and visible part of the non-sustainable way of our lives. This generates a lot of attention, and I hope that you guys down there in Sydney are not going to be really suffering too much from the fires that are now ravaging New South Wales.
Yeah, we do have a problem. Yeah.
Yes,
we have a problem at the moment. Yeah. So I hope people are not suffering too much. Yes.
Well, and when you say we have a problem, it is true for you at the moment in New South Wales, but we, humanity, have a problem. And that problem is that our way of living, and that's especially true for the rich part of the world, and that is you and I, it's 100% non-sustainable. And over the last 2 years, in my way of thinking around peace and how are we going to get to peace and how can we motivate people, how can we get this idea out there, how can we tap into existing energies and enthusiasm, I think it is by combining sustainability and peace, as I have written in my book already. And it's actually also very authentic for me because I'm a bioengineer. I'm actually a forest engineer. And when I started to move, I felt my communication and my emotions, my discussions include more and more of the sustainability part. And then it dawned on me, it seriously dawned on me, Peter, only maybe a year ago or less, that oh yes, that's true. At 16, I chose to become a bioengineer because I love the environment, I love the planet, I love the forests and the waters and nature. And that has popped up next to peace to me as my mission. So the mission, and I have phrased it in a new way, that we have one challenge, humanity, you and I and everybody else on the planet, we have one challenge. It is to live peacefully and sustainably. And everything we do should actually fit under that umbrella. And the sustainability part is really, really becoming, through climate change, very visible and very tangible. But it is much bigger than climate. Climate is just a result. It's a symptom. It's like when you're a doctor, it is the wound. Okay, but what is beneath the wound is, of course, the way we are living. And believe it or not, but you have met my daughter also, Peter, in London,
yes.
and she was still studying. She finished her master's degree in the meantime in marine conservation at the end of July. And 1 week later, she started working with me and for me on a sustainability part that we are starting. Yes, and it's called White, Green, Blue, Sustainable You. And two of my sons in Canada, they're living in Canada with their mother, and then their best friend, they are working on developing an app that will allow anyone to immediately offset or compensate their CO2. I wanted to do this, and I didn't find the tool very easily on the internet. I did it actually just before I came to London in July. And I thought, wow, this is strange. I thought I would very quickly be able to offset my CO2 and my way of living, and I couldn't. And I said, well, if I have this need, together with myself, lots of people will have this need. And so we will launch this, the first, I would say the basic version of this app in January. And we will come out with it. Laila is now busy with developing the website and the Facebook page, etc.
That's brilliant.
But we want to team up. This is an important sign. And as you saw on the subtitle of my book, World Peace 2035, let's do it together. We will have to work together, and we will have to cross different domains. We will not just have to work in silos, which we do very often. We are each in our own silos, and we will have to reach out and connect with many others.
That's something I want to explore a little bit more about you, because all throughout history, man has, people have, not just men, but people have been willing to kill other people that are different from them, to kill other people that think different from them, that have a different ideology, even if they are the same as them, except for the ideology. It's like there's an innate human need sitting right next to our beauty, sitting right next to our love, our kindness, our capacity for the sublime, the spiritual, the good. There's also sitting right next to it this capacity for destruction, for ugliness, for evil, for war. But you're saying now, I mean, in your book 2035, which we haven't explained what 2035 means, and I'm sure you will. You will say that in a minute. Why now? Why now? What makes you think that we can do it now?
Well, first of all, to me, and I explain it in the book also, but to me, through the EU and the European Union, we have proven that it can be done. And you know, we are in the middle of a name everybody has heard in the world. It's called Brexit, right? Yes. It's ugly, it's messy, it's chaotic, it's totally, I think it's a fundamental mistake, a strategic mistake. It's fear. Or having the upper hand compared to believe in the future. It is older people denying the young people the future they want, because that's what the vote was about. The older people voting for Brexit, while the young people massively voted against Brexit. But let's not forget that despite the tremendously economic impacts and the fundamental nature of this process, it is completely, utterly peaceful. And so here you would have a process that 150 years ago would have led to massive scale war, I'm convinced. Yet today it leads to a political process, which is chaotic and ugly to look at, and it never ends, and everything you want, but there has not been one drop of blood spilled for it or in the name of it.
Which is
fantastic. And even people don't realize this. But when I look at the process, I really dislike it. But I love it because of its peacefulness. Not the verbal peace, I mean, because peace has many dimensions, but the physical, violent form of non-peace has not been expressed. And it is not even part of the thinking. There is nobody in the process on whatever side that has ever had the thought of, let's go and fight this out. It's just not part of the realm of thinking and feeling. And this is to me an answer to your question, Peter. We are proving that it is possible, not on a small scale, but on a very large scale. The European Union has about 520 billion people, I'm sorry, 500 million people. That's not just peanuts. That's a very large population. And so peace, when you have the right institutions and the right processes, then you allow the devil, this monster inside of us, this very ugly side, the dark side of human nature, to be canalized or channeled in a certain way, that it doesn't go down all the slippery slope towards this, violence and the use of violence. And this is what we want to achieve. It is to eliminate warfare as a means of solving large-scale conflicts within countries or between countries. So we are not talking.
How do we do that?
Well, that's first of all, I think, and that's a big problem. Peace is not an objective. It is not an objective of any organization in the world. It is not out there as a goal for us to achieve. And so that's the first thing we wanted to do with World Peace 2035 is we wanted to make it, first of all, a goal. And then secondly, and you know from the business world also, Peter, that if you want to achieve a goal, you have to also make it a smart goal or a smart objective. So you have to respect the T from smart, which means it has to be a time-bound objective. So if you don't give peace a time frame to strive for, you will in 100 years still say, and all of us will say, wow, how beautiful it would be if we would know peace all over the world. So I looked upon it from my perspective as a Belgian citizen, having known 2 world wars, my grandfather, my father, and I looked at myself, and then I saw how fortunate I have been. And I combined it with my love for the planet, for humanity, and I said, I have had such privileged life, I've had such opportunities. And I had a conversation with myself. What I call in my, if you look at my name on YouTube, you will see I gave 2 TED Talks on the subject of peace and world peace. You will see that I talk about the man in the mirror in my case, or the person in the mirror in general. And that person in the mirror asked me he asked me 4 questions actually, but the first one was, what are you doing about it?
Yeah, good question.
Doing about it, not moaning about it, not complaining about it, not saying how beautiful it would be. Well, what are you doing about it so that you become part of the solution and don't remain part of the problem? So that was a very confrontational time for me. And that kind of kicked me into gear. And that's why I started writing my book. As an intellectual exercise for myself, I have been reading about war and peace, and I've been visiting my west side of the country where all the graves are and the ex-battlefields and all that. So I've been growing up with this acute awareness of what war can be. I heard the stories of my father, my grandfather, and all that. So it's not very far in the past, you know. And that inoculated me, and then that all came to the surface about 5 years ago. And that's why I told myself, I was 55 at the time, and I said, I have a good chance of becoming 75. So I give myself a 20-year project. And I commit to do whatever I can to achieve world peace by 2035. Because that's a time frame that is still statistically speaking, gonna be part of my timeline. So I cannot push it to the next generation. I own it. I take ownership for it. I take responsibility for it. It is, I feel, responsibility to the next generations to make sure that they do not only have tablets and smartphones and a lot of luxury in their lives, but that my 4 children, that they can say that their father really made a big effort to also give peace and sustainability to them. And I think this is an obligation that we all have towards our children and our grandchildren, is to hand them over a peaceful world and a sustainable world. They need this at least as much as our love and affection and all the upbringing and the education that they get today in the rich world, but they need this other side also.
And how do we touch the hearts of people? Because this is a hard issue, isn't it? How do we touch the heart of people so they love getting together and respect and kindness and courtesy and all those beautiful qualities, rather than war and killing and the pushing of my opinion over other people,
right,
which is sometimes part of the problem.
And this brings me, Peter, to a very important second part of peace. It's the internal peace. So we have talked so far about external peace, and
we have.
And I need to be very honest. When I started it, I was only thinking about internal peace, external peace. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. So the geopolitical political process about, you know, the building the structures and the organizations that help humanity to deal with conflict in a non-violent way, which we do in the EU, for instance, but which we do in many other. And when you talk to New Zealand and you have a conflict, you're not going to go to war over it. You're going to solve it in another peaceful manner. But you say, of course. Did you notice, Peter? You said, of course. This was not so evident. Not so long ago. This would, yes. You know. So we are making progress. But I think then to touch the hearts, we touch on the inner peace. And this has been most of my work, actually, since I started. And very quickly, I have been working on myself for a long time, about 20 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then I started, especially I would say towards the end of the first year, about a year ago, I started the advisory board of the nonprofit pushed me in a very positive direction. They really helped me to get on the right track. And they asked me, Gert, what do you want to achieve with this nonprofit? What is the unique value proposition? One of my good friends and a member of the advisory board asked me, how do you want to be unique? Or do you want to become one more NGO like there are already hundreds and thousands? also working on peace. There are many organizations working on peace. And it was actually in the subtitle of my book, Let's Do It Together. So the mission we have defined for world peace is to bring together. It is to connect. It is to facilitate. It is to coordinate. And it is to be a catalyst. And it all boils down to togetherness, to touching, helping each other connect on a heart level, on a level of being, of the positive side of human nature. And you can only do that if you have, first of all, peace with yourself. Because if you don't have peace with yourself, how can you possibly have peace with another person? And then I think another key word in the process is connection. I told you that I feel very strongly connected to nature, and I even on a spiritual level, I feel a world citizen, and to me, my home is the planet. It is also very clear and easy to understand. It is not a fictional line on a landscape, because the border between the US and Canada, it is just on a map. If you drive there and there are border posts, but if you go in the middle of a forest, there is no line to see. It's just the human construction. Huh? But the planet is a very finite kind of a ball in space. And to me, that is, I was, my parents are from the same small village in Belgium. They grew up in a tiny village. And then I grew up in Brussels, and I've been able to explore the world. And around the family table, besides my parents, you have my brother, who has also been traveling a lot. My wife is of Brazilian origin. My kids were all born in Hong Kong. There are three of them are living in Canada. My daughter is now living again with me in Belgium. But then we had, we are, my sister-in-law, my wife's brother is of African origin. Two of my nieces are half European, half African. We have the world around our little family table. And this is what's happening. We do, really. And this is what's happening in the world, Peter, on a small scale. But it has not, I would say, moved up into the spirits of our current generation of leaders. We currently have a very ugly generation of leaders. Ugly in the sense of very narrow-minded, without a clear vision that goes beyond the me, that goes beyond the borders of their own constituencies. Trump verbalizes it in the most clear way, but he's not the only one acting in this way. He says America first, as if America can flourish if the planet doesn't flourish. It doesn't flourish if the planet doesn't flourish. So I believe that we have to get rid of, and time will do that work for us, of this ugly generation of leaders who are not able to surpass this narrow-mindedness. I call it dinosaur thinking. It is bygone. They should be wiped out by life, I would say, because they are harming all of us, and they're harming the planet by their, I would say, the thinking that is not evolving with what's happening in life. Like my family, I just showed you, this is an example. If you are connected to other people and to nature and the planet, when you hurt other people, you hurt yourself.
Agreed.
And so I saw a very interesting sentence that altruism, so doing good for the other, is actually equal to egoism if you understand that you are connected to all the others. Because if you do something good for the others, you do it for yourself.
And that's a beautiful belief, and I think that would cause a lot of goodness to come forth. And my issue here, and I'm playing devil's advocate, because I do know, because I've traveled the world as well, and I've seen beautiful people. By the way, there are beautiful hearted people everywhere I go. That's right. I have no doubt of that. But right next to those beautiful people, there are people also that they're very much for themselves. Or they have ideologies, or they have beliefs, or they have religions that are all about, this is the right way of thinking. And if you don't think like I do, you shouldn't be alive. And this is kind of the basis of a war is that, isn't it? You're not my brother, you're an other. And if you're another, anything goes. And I wish we had come a long way. And I think in the West, we have come a long way, although there are some movements at the moment that do worry me. some people are not respecting other people with different opinions, and that is an issue.
Yes.
What are your thoughts around that? Because I'm sure
Well,
you've thought about this. You have to have
yeah,
thought.
of course. But I go back to being a privileged person because I grew up in an
Good.
environment, being the European Union, where we see constantly how 28 countries with different opinions, with different religions, with different ideologies are so far living in peace and have been living in peace for 75 years now. And yes, there are tendencies that are very worrying, but I think they are rooted in a very big, important concept that is bringing up often the ugly side of human beings, and that is fear. And what has really pushed the populism and the right or the extremes of the political spectrum in recent years in the European Union also is the problem of migration, or the problem of immigrants, exacerbated, of course, by this extremely ugly reality of Islamic fundamentalism. I would say through Al-Qaeda, but much more through IS, which obviously was the ugliest of the ugly. And they very strongly, through very savvy use of social media, promoted this idea of you are not a Muslim, and you even within Islam, you don't think like our version of Islam, and we kill you. And we have the right, based on a book written 1400 years ago, we have the right to kill us. Oh, my interpretation of this book gives me the right to kill you. And they did. I mean, I remember they just cut the throat of one Christian priest in a church because two young terrorists, young people thinking that they own this God-given right to kill this monster of a Christian man. But it has also been the other way around in history. So there, as I write in my book, also
we were those people. We were those people.
Yeah,
like
we were
our
those
ancestors.
people.
Yeah, but they were willing to kill other people that were not in the same religions.
Definitely. And so I wrote this chapter on this in my book also, and it was a chapter I wrote maybe 10 times or rewrote because it was of such a at the time when I wrote it, it was 2016. And then we were in a full swing in ISIS, and so it was delicate, and I didn't want to come across as a Westerner of Christian origin who thinks he can blame the Muslims and all that. I'm not blaming the Muslims at all. I'm just saying that at this particular time in history, it is this very fundamental nature of or version of Islam that lives what you just explained. You don't think like me, so I have the right, because of a religious document and a doctrine, to cut your throat. This is, to me, is of an unbelievable ugliness, and
horrible.
It's horrible, and it's everywhere on the social media. It's everywhere in the news. So it is an idea that has been promulgating, and what is, I would say, a subsequent problem is that because it is in the media so much, and not only that, but because the media in general is 80-90% negative, and the news is always it has to bleed or it doesn't lead. What we get to see through the media every single day is, most of it is negative. What it doesn't do is it shows to the people of the world all the good that is happening. You just say, I met some beautiful people. There are many more good people than bad people. The problem is that the bad people usually are making more noise, use the system more successfully, and that the media, which is a very powerful player in the whole all of human society, is just permeating and promoting the ugly side of what is happening in the world. So we are getting a lot more negative input than positive, and it's very hard, even for a person like myself who is reading a lot and is a lot I have a lot of interest in international and geopolitical news and in news in general. It's very difficult to hear something positive, and you need to work on yourself, and you need to kind of brush it off, take a kind of a shower to brush off this negative input. And most people don't do it. Most people don't make this effort, and therefore they're stuck with this idea about first of all, it's not possible to have peace or to get along in a peaceful manner with each other. I'm fortunate that I live in a part of the world where we are, and where we are. Australia, you are doing it amongst Australians, but of course it's a huge country. But we are having 28 countries here, 28 different nationalities, very different cultures, different religions. We have Islam, we have Judaism, we have Christianity, we have also, of course, Hinduism in small amounts, and other religions, but the big ones are definitely here. And there are sometimes disturbances and flare-ups, usually by extreme people who do not accept another person having another opinion, be it religious or otherwise. I think it's going to be a long time before you have eliminated that element of human nature. We need to put what we have achieved in the European Union. We are not better than anybody else, and this is my fundamental belief. What we have achieved can be achieved anywhere. If we could do it, we who have known so much war and who have caused so much trouble, we have caused the world to suffer from Europe. We have also had our colonialism. We have our, the last 500 years, Europe through its exploration travels, and we have colonized a lot. The Spaniards, the British, the Dutch, the French, the Germans. We have colonized big parts of the world. Then there was the independence struggle, etc. But now here we have come to our senses, I would say, and we are showing the world that it can be done.
That's beautiful. So what's the plan? Do we have a plan? Good.
Well, that's a very good point, and that has been my sore point. When I started it, I was feeling that you need to start with an objective, and you need to make it a smart objective. So you need to give it a timeline. That's the first thing, and you need to kind of get the message out.
So we've got 2035. We're getting the message out.
Right. And now, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this as well, because it is a difficult point, and to me it was always from the beginning. I don't have the wisdom, and I don't claim to have the wisdom nor the knowledge to myself say this is how we're going to do it. I would think of myself as being extremely arrogant. That's something that has been so elusive, and as you call it, a big quest, massive quest, that I would feel I'm the guy who knows it, because I don't. But what I do know is
we do need some leadership.
Yes, you're
so
right.
It might not be you. We're not going to put all our fingers on Gert. That would not be fair.
Thank you.
But you're leading a movement, and maybe what your gift is to the world is to help us communicate with each other.
Well, and that brings me to, because I'm also a man of action, and I've had a corporate career, and I am very grateful for it, because I do believe that corporate life is going to be an important part of the success, also of creating peace. But the plan is that we wanted to get that message out. I think we have achieved it now. We need to now make the next step. So I have spoken to high-level politicians. I'm fortunate enough in Belgium, they are very, you can easily get in touch with them. We have Herman van Rompuy, who was the first president of the European Council. So it's kind of a president of the colleague of the predecessor of Tusk and the colleague of Junckers. And I spoke to him when I had finished my manuscript of the book, and I said, I sent him a mail, and I said, look, I'm writing this book. I would like to talk to you about it. Would you be available for a discussion? And he says, yes, for sure. So we talked. And then I asked him also, you have a lot of experience, and I asked him, how would you go about it?
Good question.
Yes, I thought so too. And he said, I don't have a clue.
Bad answer.
No, not a bad
answer. But it is a good answer.
A very honest answer. It's a
disappointing answer, but it's a good answer. Yeah. It's a true answer.
And it made me, as we say in my own language, it made me swallow deeply, and thought, because I thought like, whoa, if people who are active, who have been active on such high level, because these are world leaders. These are not local politicians. No, they are world leaders. They have been leading the EU. They have been leading 500 million people. and they're on the same level as, even though you don't hear them so much, you don't see them so much, but at the same level as a Trump or a Putin. And so then, first of all, it illustrates what I've been saying. It is not an objective. And if it is not an objective, you don't think about how can we get there. So they don't have an answer to it. I asked it to several other people. One of the person who wrote a foreword in my book is the ex-prime minister of Belgium. He was also a minister of foreign affairs. He's 86 years old now, and he's a very, very intelligent and erudite person. He was a professor in economy, and it was such a pleasure to speak with him several times. But even to that question, he didn't have a clear answer. He didn't have like a clear path that would help me say, okay, we're going to do this, this, this. So I have come to the conclusion that the next advisory board, which is on the 9th of December, we are going to have two topics on the agenda. And the first one is exactly this. I'm going to ask one more time, how can we put at least or create a pathway to peace by 2035? What are the steps that we need to take? And I have already in my mind, I worked a lot around the translation of this idea into steps that people can understand. So it is a staircase. At the top of the staircase, you have World Peace 2035. But we need to take the small steps that will step by step lead us to the top of the staircase.
So at least we have a step you're going to be asking.
Well, it's much more than that. So I think it is necessary that there is what I would call a task force.
Yes.
People like myself around the table who are motivated, and this is maybe fundamental, who feel it within themselves as being their mission or their purpose. Because for me, it has become my purpose. It's the reason why I'm here, okay? And I want to give it everything I have so that I can do, or that I can look myself in the mirror in 2035 and ask myself, did you do what you could?
Yes.
This is to me a very important question, and I asked myself that question in 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When I asked myself, can you live with yourself in 2035 if you do not act now, in 2015? And you know that you could have acted, you know that you should have acted, but you did not because you were afraid, because you were more comfortable in your comfort zone or in your shadow, and you must move out of the shadow into the light. There is no other way. So it has been labor, work, a lot of effort mentally, but also physically, emotionally. And so after 2 years, we have done some things we have done very well, but now we need to step up to the next step, which is then bringing together a core team of people. I don't know yet who they are, but I'm going to ask my advisory board, help me with bringing those people together. And there is a second point that is very important, that this is very embryonic, but it is new, but it is also one of my friends who is on the advisory board. He is a very system thinker. Very, very intelligent man who has also been working with governments around the world, helping them to, for instance, in Burundi or in Ivory Coast, to reconcile populations that have been at war with each other. And so he has been participating in very, very difficult, intractable problems. And he launched the idea of, and he's also a bioengineer like me. And maybe it's not a coincidence that we came with, I was not struggling, I was having the idea about building a global alliance for world peace. And I I talked about it to different NGOs with peace, involved in peace. And I sensed a lot of resistance.
Oh.
Be it, resistance to, oh, I'm a kind of an outsider, you know. Why are you gonna put your nose into this, and what gives you the right, or what gives you the blah blah blah? So I sensed a lot of kind of pessimism. People within the peace community who told me, yeah, but should we not take on a small project first because this is so big? And I thought, wow, if you are working on peace and you don't believe that world peace is possible, what are you doing?
That's true.
Well, no, but this is what I sensed.
Yes,
and it has to do with the human territorial, you know, it's like they all fight for their subsidies and for their money, and they see a new organization as a threat because you just split up the pie a little bit more into more parties. I don't have any intention of applying for subsidies or whatever. We're going to finance ourselves in different ways. But then I came to the word ecosystem, and so this is maybe you can take this for your program, Peter. We have just launched the GPS ecosystem.
GPS
the idea,
ecosystem.
yes, and it's called the Global Peace and Sustainability Ecosystem. And this is a part of the answer to you. I think that society and human civilization is very, very rich, and you cannot have another top-down kind of traditional way of looking at things. You have to look at it in an innovative way, in a way that has not been tested yet, and that allows a lot of freedom of people everywhere in the world to do what they feel is right for their neck of the woods, in their community, be it very local, be it national, be it a cultural project that brings together people, be it a political project, be it an ecological project, be it an economic project. It's not because you work on peace that you have to lock yourself up in a very narrow tube and only work on this, because society is built up in a very complex manner. And so we are going to start GPS ecosystem. I cannot give you more meat on the bone today because we're in the intellectual work, and I have a meeting with my good friend on the 20th of November. So that's in about 9 days. And we are going to work exactly around this. It's about
fantastic.
How are we going to build this ecosystem? Because an ecosystem is about, think about nature. It's about interaction to the mutual benefit of people, of the organisms involved. But it is also giving them a lot of freedom. And my friend uses the image of a shopping mall. Shopping mall is an ecosystem, and you bring together all these different shops that have their own business, they have their own independent action plan, but they are gathering together geographically in a certain spot. They're exchanging because they interact with each other, and we want to create that kind of structure where you bring together, which is the mission of world peace, is to bring together, to facilitate, to coordinate, to connect. And we give it now a more finite structure in the shape of a GPS ecosystem. And so we're going to build on all the necessary, and we're going to merge that with the world peace. So it absorbs World Peace 2035. World Peace 2035 is going to be a founding partner or founding member of this, but it is only going to be one small member. There's going to be hundreds and hopefully thousands and many thousands in the future who each in their part of the world will do for their society what is good, but we will create a forum, a marketplace, a location where they all come together so that we can learn from each other, that we can promote, that we can give visibility to what is the good that is happening. And so that is you know, what you are doing also, Peter, on mental wealth, mental health, very important. That would be a perfect part of an ecosystem, you know.
It has to be a part of it. You know, it has to be a part of it.
It has to be a part of it. But the fact that we came up now with the term ecosystem pulls it open to actually, and makes it very, very multidimensional. And it makes it maybe more, we can maybe reach the heart of the people by touching them on something that is very important to them. It can be the well-being of dogs or cats, well-being of handicapped children, or whatever it is. It can be the well-being, the mental well-being of people. It can be ecological, whatever. But that we are all in this together. We are all part of one big ecosystem. And so our current political system doesn't work the way it ought to work. Our multilateral system doesn't work as well as it ought to work. So let's, from the bottom up, create an ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a beautiful mission. Let's do that. Let's do that. How can we support you? How can we support you?
Well, for the moment, I would say we need internally to do some more work in the coming 1 to 2 months. We need to build a little bit more structure, organization in it, and then I will, of course, through you, contact you. I will invite you to become part of the ecosystem. When I was talking about peace, from my perspective, the geopolitical external peace, that was much more narrow. But when I talk about an ecosystem that includes peace and sustainability, which is very broad. Sustainability is very broad, but they are I go back to the fundamental mission of mankind, to create or to live in peace and in a sustainable way. This is GPS, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so I will come to you, and then through you, you can of course do your mission and work on your mission, and hopefully you are willing then to become part of the ecosystem that has as a goal to create a planet where peace and sustainability will be daily reality for all of us.
That would be beautiful. And I think one of the things that we need to do is help to put the message out there to as many people as possible, make those 1 million followers into 250 million, and then that will provide muscle to the movement.
Correct.
I mean, 1 million is a beautiful, great achievement. Don't get me wrong, but let's drive this movement. And I love your quote in the beginning of your book: "Our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about the things that matter." So let us never become silent. This is too important. There's too much suffering in the world. So thank you very much. This was an amazing introduction. And I'm sure people must have been hanging to your every word, because I think we all want peace. I mean, there's always a percentage of the population that don't, they're too damaged, but they're minuscule. We cannot concentrate. That's why we have police, But overall, people, we want peace. We want to be able to get along. So if we achieve a little bit around that, I think we can do a lot of good.
Right. And well, it would be very kind if you could maybe refer in your communication to our Facebook page, which is just the name World Peace 2035. You come to us, then we can grow the community, and from there we will move into GPS very soon, and then you become part of the ecosystem that is.
So if you send me the links, all your links in an email, I will make sure that they're all in the YouTube description, because this is going to be in YouTube, available for everybody. We'll put it there, and then we will also include that in the magazine article, so people can go and join. And we will do a good promotion of this, which is important. It is an important quest. And look, I completely understand the world leaders' answer. I have no idea how this is going to happen, but God, I wish it happens, I want it. And I wanted to turn it into a goal. I don't want it to stay as a wish. I want a time frame. I want a plan. So yes, whichever way we can help. And by the way, you say that you're going to be self-funding this. How are you going to be doing that?
Well, I've been, of course, funding it myself. This has all been personal money. So, of course, it becomes over the period of 2 years, because I have 2 people in Brazil that I pay half time to do the social media communication, websites, also Facebook ads and all that. It all costs money. So we are with the white, green, blue that I talked about very briefly in the beginning. That's a for-profit activity, a social for-profit. But we will dedicate 3% of whatever income we generate that will be given to World Peace. So we don't have a goal to build a big team or whatever. We want to build an ecosystem, but an ecosystem that is maintaining itself. We don't want to be building, like so many NGOs, overhead that costs a lot of money and all that. We want to be minimal, but work in a different way, so that every person can be part of an ecosystem, can do whatever he or she would like to do, live his or her purpose. And by being part of a...
So you don't have a donation button or
yes,
a donation
we have,
stream?
Yeah, we have donation button, but to be very honest, the subject of peace is the least funded in the world. I mean, of all the SDG, So
I'm thinking about individuals that are interested in donating, or organizations or companies. I would like to know that link as well, so we can also promote that.
Yeah, it's on the.
It takes money. It takes money, and it takes money. All of our responsibility. So I want to be able to put that on there. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate giving me the opportunity to connect with your audience through your program, and I appreciate it that you followed up on our meeting in London, and it also shows who you are, and that you are already part of the ecosystem. So
it had to happen. It had to happen, and I'm glad that it did. So thank you very much. And thank you in the name of mankind. Thank you for your goal of 2035, World Peace 2035. So
Thank
have
you,
a good
Peter.
evening.
Yeah, have a good
Bye-bye.
evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.